Thank you guys for being here. Obviously, still disappointed with what occurred on Saturday, but like I told you guys post-game, I know our guys played hard and gave everything they had. We obviously fell up short. Lack of execution, lack of a lot of things that we can continue to get cleaned up. But immediately, even following that game that night, found a way to watch the film and learn from it and get it to notes and then go ahead and start preparing for Temple. A short week. We know what's at stake here this Friday. We know how hard it is to play at Temple. I've been a part of a lot of those games. Their quarterback, E.J. Warner, is number 5 in the country in yards per game passing. And when he's healthy, it's a different offense. They've been very successful. We also know last year playing them, it was a 3-0 ball game, almost going into the fourth quarter. So it's going to be a tough test for us. Our guys are 1,000% focused on Temple and got the blinders on and just trying to find ways to get better. Good practice today. We're looking forward to getting up there, spending Thanksgiving with my family, which is this football program, and these guys that are so wonderful and find ways to go 1-0 today and the rest of this week.
Well, how important are your locker room leaders after a loss like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned post-game, the guys should have been frustrated. They should have been hurt, and if they're not, then they didn't put enough in. And I think you guys that have been around the program on a day-to-day basis, our guys work hard. They really do, and every head coach thinks their guys work hard and care. And I've been saying this all along. There's something unique about this group, and though we didn't get to the championship game, and our ultimate goal was to compete and win the championship, the guys have fought their tails off all season. They pour into this, so there's obviously the frustration, the hurt, but they knew they quickly had to bounce back. And they're a resilient young group, and I think we've seen that in game, right? I can always talk to you guys, hey, they're resilient, they care, they love it. And the only way you guys get to see it, the only way the fans get to see it is by the display of the actions on game day. And I think we've been able to see that all season long. And so the leaders in the locker room have been great. They said, Coach, what do we need to do? How do we need to get our focus? And they've bought in, and they've continued to push. And, if I'd just finished up a practice where it wasn't spirited, where the guys were holding their heads down and still beat up, then it would have been a bad deal. And that's my job to find ways to inspire and to motivate. But they're self-motivated, and they understand what's at stake, and that's pleasing. And it comes from the young men in our locker room, the culture we've had, the leaders, and that's been so important for our success this year. And I always say this, right? In wins, you don't ever want that win to beat you the next week, right? We've seen guys get so caught up on a win, they get hung over, and it ends up beating them the next week. Same with losses, right? It's very easy to sulk in a loss and say, well, all right, the season isn't what we wanted. Let's go ahead and pack up our stuff. Let's enjoy Thanksgiving and figure out what bowl game we're playing in. But that's not this group. They're hungry. They're ready to compete, and that's what we're made of. But 100% of the credit goes to the young men in the locker room for that mindset.
What do you say to motivate them and continue to have that focus when you do fall short of that ultimate goal, but there is something to still play for?
Yeah, it's the game of football. They're ultimate competitors, which is I'm so fortunate because we got a bunch of guys that compete. We've got a locker room full of guys that want to win football games, that want to get better, that come out with a spirit of practice like, okay, what do we need to do to continue to work? And that's unusual because this day and age in college football, a lot of coaches, they've either lost their locker room, guys have folded it up and said, hey, that's not what the result we wanted. But these guys have been great. And so I've just talked to them about, hey, the next day, let's get better today. Let's find ways. And generally that's enough. I'm not in there waving the towel, but we have fun at practice. We make the most out of it. We work hard to understanding how important it is to win this game. And I have talked to him about it, and it was brought to my attention, right, that in the history of the program, 108 years of Memphis football, only 9 teams have ever won 9 games or more. And so to me, right, like if they can go down and is one of the top 10 teams in winning game history in this program, that's huge. It's something the seniors, I think, can hang their hat on. And we'll talk about the bowl game later, but let's get through Friday. And the guys have taken the right approach.
Ryan, not to dwell on the game, but you've got a chance to look back at it. The sequence in which you're down 3 and unfortunately had 3 penalties was a big sequence in the game.
Yeah.
What happened on those plays? If you could talk specifically about the illegal, ineligible player downfield. You had
legal formation on the
Legal
punt.
formation, and there was another penalty. Can you kind of explain that in detail, what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So, putting together a drive, you're exactly right. That was I put that penalty on me on the illegal man downfield. It's a play that we've run. And like I said, post game, even when I was the offensive line coach, for 8 years, we'd only been called downfield 3 times. And this year, I think there seem to be, this is nothing on the officials. They just are calling a little bit more. And I'm not here to sit there and question the call, but we got called for legal man downfield on an explosive play. Obviously, that sets you back. And when you're facing a good team like that, it's hard to play back behind the sticks. A 1st and 25 instead of a 1st and goal at the 15 or first and 10 at the 15 or in the red zone. And then we had that amazing punt and catch by Jamari Hawkins on the pooch punt to pin him on literally the 6-inch line. That's a game-changing play. It's very hard to drive the field 99.5 yards. And unfortunately, Jamari was not lined up on the line of scrimmage. So it was an illegal formation. And then the next play we punted, we had to repunt. And, Simeon Blair, one of our best players, they called him for, an unnecessary roughness. And so that sequence of penalties is, could have changed, obviously, what happened. And we've got to get that cleaned up. We've been a pretty clean team as far as penalties go, right? I think we're bottom. Since I've been the head coach, we've been bottom 20 in least amount of penalties called, against us. The guys play pretty clean, but those are things that, man, you change it, maybe it's a difference in the ballgame. And we harp on it, we show them. And our guys know, and it's amazing because sometimes those penalties occur on the biggest plays or by some of your most players you count on the most.
Sorry. I asked Seth this post-game Saturday. You guys have already won more games than you did the previous 2 years. Could have your first 10-win season since 2019. I know it hurts right now. Do you feel like you guys are close as a program to where you want to be?
Where we want to be is ultimately winning championships. And I've said that, and I always said, the minimum expectation is to go to bowl games. And it's an awesome, and I think I mentioned this, Matt, about a month ago, I don't want to ever lose sight of the fact that we're going to our 10th bowl game. That's pretty cool for the history of this program. Then you look at the company that's kept with that. Those are some elite programs that have been up there, and I take great stake in understanding the importance of that. But then, we'll look at the record at the end of the season, and I know the question's going to be asked, Friday after the game, hey, was it a successful regular season? But, look, the goal was to win the championship. We fell short of it. But we're not going to be a woe is me team and feel sorry for ourselves. The hurt, it's there, but, man, you can't sit there. Just like a lot of, I remember games from 24 years ago. If those things affect me now, then I'm in trouble. But it's just like everybody's scars in their life, right? They make you better. And we'll learn from that one and great focus. But I've been appreciative of Seth and all those other guys just saying, okay, let's just stack days, let's stack the wins and figure it out when it's all said and done. But just proud of their focus and just saying, look, we understand the records, we understand those things. And I will never be satisfied. You're never, as a head coach, you're never satisfied. I mean, you hear about these. I've never gone undefeated other than in high school, and you're never satisfied. You can win a game by 42 points, and it's our job is to find the things, the mistakes, and harp on the really good things that we're doing this year. But until we win that championship, I'll say that I've got a lot more work to do.
What are those conversations been like with the leaders of this team after the disappointment? And then it's a short weekend, you got to play on the road, like just all that stuff.
It's the buy-in. You guys, Jonah, have heard me use the term all-in, and as I mentioned earlier, my worry would be if we went out there and guys were showing up late this morning, guys weren't energized at practice, guys, seeing guys go in the portal. That's what's happening at some of these other places, and the leaders are great. They're like, man, coach, let's go. And they know they don't have to worry about me, right? I'll be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and it's just making sure, but I don't have to be a rah-rah or any of that stuff. They're as balled in as I've ever seen, which is phenomenal. They care about each other more so than I've ever seen in my 8 years here, which is phenomenal. And that type of stuff is, as a head coach, you give yourself a chance. And but they know, right? And when I get to stand in front of them and speak a message of here's what we need to do and here's what it needs to look like, and then you get to hear it in the locker room and then you hear it out on the field by some of the guys, it's like, man, it really, you come to appreciate those leaders and what they meant to this program, and that their buy-in's still there.
Coach, you mentioned on your TV show 2 weeks ago that going to Eastern Time would be a big adjustment for your players. Now that you're going into Temple the next weekend, has those adjustments been made?
Yeah, so, we are a morning practice team, which is, I think, will help us. And I think what's happened is over the years, a lot more teams are going to morning practices. It is a noon Eastern game, so it's 11 Central. And I think having played, we were playing some of these night games at the beginning of the season. And I think now playing some of these morning games, which to the fans, it's not my decision on some of those. I know somebody thinks that I magically get to select them all. But to be able to play at 11 Central Time again, I think we'll be okay. But we adjust. Obviously, we're going on the road. We know it's a difficult place to play. We've had our struggles there for a variety of reasons. During our Cotton Bowl year, I was there when we lost that game, and and just in general, sometimes in certain environments, we haven't been exactly where we need to be. But our guys will adjust to the time zone difference, and they do a great job of that preparation. And it starts all week by getting up and going playing football every morning.
How do you that environment to prepare for versus like a packed crowd? Obviously, playing a big stadium, it's a morning game, Black Friday. I don't know what the attendance is going to be like, but how do you prepare for that environment?
So we do talk about it. I don't try to hide from the fact. Even when we played in Charlotte, they had a nice crowd and a nice stadium, but it's a smaller venue than sometimes we've been used to playing in. And I show them. I say, hey, here's what the crowd looked like at the last home game. So our guys are prepared. I think it's my job as a coach to prepare our guys to the best of our ability of, hey, this is what the environment's going to look like. You go somewhere, I told them, hey, in Charlotte, the student section is going to be right behind us. They're going to be yelling at you. They're going to call you. They're going to know who your girlfriend is. They're going to be calling you all sorts of names. No different than when we go play, in St. Louis, right? Hey, guys, here's what the dome looks like. Here's the locker room that I recall. We're going to get there a day early, but, this is what the turf looks like. Here's where the clocks are. And if you guys had the chance that you came out to practice this morning and you got to see, we actually painted our fields to look just like the Eagle Stadium does for Temple games. So what they have is they actually have the NFL numbers, and then they've got the college numbers as almost tick marks, as almost like side hashes. And it can, if you haven't practiced on it, it can be difficult to just go all of a sudden go out there and be like, wait a second, oh, that's the NFL number, and the hashes are the same. But so we've actually, our credit to our field maintenance crew, they did a phenomenal job of actually preparing our fields to look like the one at Temple, which is it's huge. And that way we're hopefully practicing that way and preparing. That's another way to prepare them for the environment. And I know you'll be there, so that's really all that matters.
You kind of figured out, seriously, places that you, Tulsa, I'm not going to count here, but where there's not a lot of people, that quiet atmosphere, you kind of have won lately. We talked this year, North Texas was that way, UAB was that way. Is there something that you figured out here?
Well, I think it speaks to the maturity of the team, and I'll go back, and it's an advantage to have been here now 8 years, and even as an assistant here, we struggled in some of those environments, and I always said, what is it, right? Like, even in our best years, I'll go back to the Cotton Bowl year, right? Like, Tulsa freshman kicker, and again, I'd always bring that up, but that environment may have not been the best environment at Tulsa, and we had a Cotton Bowl team, and had the kid missed a kick, it's a different story, right? Then we lost at Temple that year, and the environment that year may have not been the same as it was for College game day here. And we're so fortunate because we got an awesome fan base here. We got a wonderful stadium, so the home environment's always electric. It's always phenomenal, and credit to the students, they've been amazing this year. But then you go on the road, so you try to prepare them. And I think part of that is a mature team, right? Because if you're motivated by the external factors like so many of us are, whether you're 18, 43, that's a natural thing. But we try to get our guys, don't worry about that stuff. In between the white lines, whether we put the ball down on get well, when we go play, at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, or we get to go play where the Eagles play, right? Wherever it is, we're just playing football. And so let's block that out. And I think the guys have done a nice job, and I credit them for having that focus. And sometimes it's not easy based off of the environment, but credit to the guys' maturity, and we continue to try to prepare them for that. Good or bad, right? Sometimes you're preparing for crowd noise, and sometimes our cowbells, and sometimes you're preparing for, hey, let's not play any music. There's going to be nobody there, and let's go figure this thing out.
So will it be a big team turkey dinner on Thursday?
So what we've got planned is you guys already know I'm going to eat big regardless, right? Even if it's whatever they're serving for lunch. So what we're going to do is Thursday, we're going to have a huge Thanksgiving feast here for lunch, and then we're going to load the airplane, and I'm sure everybody will be asleep. But we're going to have a massive Thanksgiving lunch here, okay? And then we'll get there, and because it is the night before game, had it been a night game, we probably would have had a big Thanksgiving meal at the hotel. But what we're going to do is our normal night before pregame ritual. We don't need guys, especially myself, right? Like loading up on extra pumpkin pie and whipped cream and all those other things. So if I can't help myself, I'm sure the players can't. So we're just going to keep it there at the lunch, let them load up on a heavy lunch of Thanksgiving, and then do our normal pre-night before game, especially with it being an early kickoff.
Go Black Friday shopping if you guys win.
Will I be going Black Friday shopping if I win?
Team.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, Matt, I know it's hard to believe I'm not much of a shopper. I'm sure the guys are. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably give them Saturday off, and so maybe on the flight home, if we get home in time, they can go Black Friday shopping. But you guys know me, I'm a hermit, so that means I just will probably come back to my office on Black Friday, and maybe you can send me some good deals or something I can buy. Maybe you guys got to let me figure out. Doing some shopping, we'll figure that out. But usually, other people point me in the right direction of what's good to go.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.